The air inside the courtroom felt heavier than stone, thick with the weight of judgment and the smell of too many bodies pressed into one place. The long oak benches groaned under the restless shifting of journalists, their cameras poised like rifles aimed at the man in the defendant's chair. Lights strobed from the relentless flashbulbs, washing the polished wood in cold bursts of white. Every lens was fixed on Robert Caldwell, the man they once called a visionary, now branded a villain. The gavel came down hard, a sharp crack that reverberated through the chamber like a gunshot. Judge Harold Whitman's voice followed, steady and final. This court orders Robert Caldwell to pay the sum of $962 million to the plaintiffs Vanessa Morgan, Breonna Taylor, Allison Parker, Natalie Reynolds, and Diana Chen for damages related to harassment, discrimination, and the maintenance of a hostile work environment. There was no gasp from Robert, no visible flinch. He simply sat there, his broad shoulders slumped, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the mahogany railing. The verdict had not surprised him. He had felt it coming for weeks, creeping into his life the way mold crept into damp walls. But hearing it spoken aloud was something else. It was the sound of a lifetime of work collapsing in a single sentence. Once, Robert Caldwell had been the man everyone wanted to interview, to invest in, to work for. Horizon Technologies had been. Born in the cramped confines of his garage, just a man with a soldering iron, an idea, and the kind of restless ambition that never let him sleep. 25 years later, he had built it into a global powerhouse, a company that redefined holographic imaging and made him a billionaire before he was 50. Now, as he sat in that courtroom, he was just another defendant in the eyes of the law, another headline in the endless churn of public scandal. From the gallery, a figure sat motionless, his ex-wife Catherine. She wore her white coat from the hospital, her stethoscope looped around her neck like a talisman. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight knot, her expression carved from stone. She didn't look at him, didn't offer even the smallest flicker of recognition. They had been divorced for 6 years, but the quiet civility they kept for their daughter's sake had begun to dissolve the moment these accusations made the news. Now, Robert doubted there was anything left between them but shared custody and shared disappointment. The 5 plaintiffs stood in a tight cluster near their attorney, their designer heels clicking on the polished floor as they posed subtly for the cameras. Vanessa Morgan, the ringleader, stood in front, her expression solemn, but her eyes glinting with something harder. She had played her role to perfection, a wronged woman standing up to power. The others followed her lead, their victory smiles carefully hidden behind masks of dignified sorrow. The murmur of voices swelled behind Robert, a tide of speculation and condemnation. He barely heard it. His thoughts had wandered elsewhere, away from the cameras and the judgment, away from Catherine's stony silence, away from the suffocating air of defeat. They had drifted to Emma, his 11-year-old daughter, who still called him dad with a kind of unshakable faith. She was at school now, or so he hoped. Too young to sit in this courtroom, too innocent to see her father's name dragged through the mud. He had no idea how he would explain this to her. How could he tell her the world had decided he was guilty, even when he knew he was not? Judge Whitman's gavel came down again, signaling the end of the proceedings. Court is adjourned. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions, their microphones thrust toward Robert as his attorney shielded him with a hand on his shoulder. The scrape of chairs, the shuffle of expensive shoes, the hum of victory and defeat mingled in the air. Robert rose slowly, feeling as though the weight of the verdict had lodged itself in his bones. Then the heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom slammed open with a thunderous bang that cut through the noise like a blade. Heads turned sharply toward the sound. A small figure stood framed in the doorway, clutching a purple backpack to her chest. "Stop!" The voice was high, clear, and trembling not from fear, but from urgency. They lied for the first time in months. Robert Caldwell's head snapped up, his eyes locking on the last person he expected to see here. Emma. The moment her voice rang out, the courtroom seemed to freeze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Pens stopped scratching. Even the cameras paused for a fraction of a second before the clicking erupted again, faster, more urgent. Emma stood there in the doorway, cheeks flushed from running, her small hands gripping the purple backpack so tightly her knuckles were white. She was dressed in her school uniform plaid skirt, white shirt slightly untucked, a scuffed pair of sneakers that squeaked with every step she took toward the front. Robert's heart kicked painfully in his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be at school, far away from this circus. Emma. he whispered, his voice half a warning, half a plea. Judge Whitman's deep voice cut through the murmurs. Young lady, this is a court of law. You can't just... Yes, I can, Emma interrupted, her chin lifting in defiance, because they're lying about my dad. The words cracked through the air like a lightning strike. The 5 models exchanged quick, nervous glances. Vanessa Morgan's eyes narrowed, the faintest twitch betraying her composure. The district attorney rose from her seat, already protesting. Your Honor, this is highly inappropriate. But Emma kept walking, her sneakers squeaking across the polished floor. She reached the defense table, dropped her backpack on it with a heavy thud, and looked up at her father. Her eyes were burning with certainty. I found proof, she said simply. The room exploded in noise, gasps, whispered questions, the frantic clicking of cameras. Catherine shot to her feet in the gallery, her voice sharp. Emma, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in class. But Emma didn't turn around. Her gaze stayed fixed on the judge. Your Honor, I have evidence that these women made everything up. It's all in here. She patted the backpack. Judge Whitman banged his gavel repeatedly until the chaos subsided. He leaned forward, studying her as if trying to decide whether this was a brave child or an audacious prank. Approached the bench. He said finally. Emma obeyed, walking slowly now, aware of every eye on her. The bench towered over her small frame, but she didn't shrink back. Her voice softened but stayed steady. I know I'm just a kid, but I've been working on computers since I was 6. I know how to find things people try to hide, and I found things that prove they lied. About my dad. A muscle twitched in the DA's jaw. This is outrageous. She's a minor with no... Sit down, Ms. Lawson, the judge ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'll decide what's outrageous in my courtroom. He looked back at Emma. How did you come by this evidence? Emma hesitated for a split second, then told the truth. Some of it I found online, some I found at home, and some I heard. When I wasn't supposed to, Robert felt his throat tighten. She had been investigating while he'd been to Rapid Legal Strategy to see what she was doing. The judge motioned to the bailiff. Escort Miss Caldwell to my chambers. Both attorneys, you'll join us. The rest of you, remain here. As Emma was led from the room, Robert caught her eye. For the first time in months, there was something alive in his chest, hope. Sharp and almost painful in its suddenness stopped behind him. The models huddled, voices low and urgent. Vanessa's expression was rigid, her knuckles white against the leather strap of her designer bag. Robert didn't know exactly what was in that backpack, but the look in Emma's eyes told him one thing. Whatever it was going to change everything. The judge's chambers felt like another world compared to the buzzing, crowded courtroom outside, quieter, dimmer, yet charged with a tension that seemed to hum in the air. Heavy curtains blocked the sunlight, letting only a muted glow seep through. The walls were lined with shelves of law books, their spines worn from years of use. A single lamp cast a circle of gold over the polished desk where Judge Whitman now sat, leaning forward, his eyes fixed on the small girl standing in front of him. Emma's purple backpack sat on the desk between them, zipped tight, as though guarding a secret. Robert sat to her left with his attorney, James Wilson, while the district attorney, Patricia Lawson, perched stiffly on the other side, her expression a mask of skepticism. A court-appointed child advocate, Ms. Donovan, stood behind Emma, her hand lightly resting on the girl's shoulder. Miss Caldwell, the judge began, his voice softer here than it had been in the courtroom. You've interrupted legal proceedings to claim you have evidence that could affect this case. Before we even open that bag, I need to understand how'd you got it. Emma swallowed hard, but kept her gaze steady. I used my dad's old home security backups and some programs I wrote myself. I also looked at stuff on the internet stuff they didn't want people to notice, and I recorded some conversations. You recorded people without their consent. Lawson pounced, leaning forward, her voice sharp. Emma didn't flinch. I know it's not allowed, but what they were doing wasn't allowed either. If I didn't record them, no one would believe me. No one believed my dad. The judge's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. Show me. Emma unzipped the backpack slowly, pulling out a neatly organized set of files, a tablet, and a small, black USB drive. She began with the USB, handed it to the judge's clerk, who connected it to a secure laptop. Within seconds, the screen displayed a side-by-side comparison of photographs, the same photographs the plaintiffs had submitted to the court as evidence. in the altered versions. Robert appeared to be touching one model inappropriately, leaning too close to another, caught in a compromising angle with a third, but in the originals, his posture was neutral, his expression professional, the context completely different. These are the original files, Emma explained, pointing. They were copied from my dad's system 6 months ago during a company party. The same night, Vanessa Morgan went into his office when no one else was there. The metadata proves they were altered afterward using advanced image editing software. James Wilson leaned forward, his lawyer's eyes scanning the timestamps. This is an amateur work, he murmured. Whoever did this knew exactly how to cover their tracks. Emma nodded grimly. I think it was Derek Sullivan. He used to work for my dad. He knew the system inside out, and Vanessa, she gave him the reason to do it. Speculation, Lawson snapped. Evidence, Emma countered, her voice rising for the first time. She tapped on her tablet, pulling up an audio file. The speakers crackled to life, and the room filled with the unmistakable voices of two women, Natalie Reynolds and Catherine Caldwell. I don't care about the money, Nat, her mother's voice said, low and tense. This has gone too far. The board is forcing him out of his own company. Do you know what that will do to him? It's too late to back out now, Natalie replied coolly. Vanessa has everything in motion. Stick to the plan, and you'll have full custody when this is over, with your share of the settlement. You can give Emma everything she's ever wanted. The recording ended in heavy silence. Robert sat frozen, torn between fury and heartbreak. Ms. Donovan's eyes flicked toward him, reading the storm in his expression, but Emma didn't falter. There's more, she said, her small hands moving over the tablet. This time, security footage appeared a grainy but clear image of Vanessa slipping into Robert's private office. During the company party, the timestamp matched the exact window when the original photos had been copied. She emerged 7 minutes later, her bag bulging slightly. Lawson shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Your Honor, while this is troubling, none of it conclusively proves, save it, Judge Whitman interrupted, his gaze fixed on the screen. Miss Caldwell, did you uncover this on your own? Emma nodded. I didn't want my dad to lose everything because no one wanted to look deeper. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. I am ordering an immediate stay of judgment, pending a full investigation into potential evidence tampering and perjury. Robert exhaled shakily, as though taking his first real breath in months, but Emma wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were locked on the DA, on the models waiting outside, on the invisible web of lies she had just torn open. She knew this wasn't over. If anything, it was only the beginning. The buzz of whispers outside the judge's chambers grew louder the moment the door opened. Emma walked back into the courtroom at Robert's side, the purple backpack slung over her shoulder like a shield. The air felt different now, no longer the smug confidence of the plaintiff's side, but a faint tremor running through the rows of perfectly dressed models and their legal team. Vanessa Morgan sat rigid in her seat, her manicured fingers tapping against her designer handbag. She tried to meet Emma's gaze with a glare, but the girl didn't even glance her way. Robert followed his daughter down the aisle, the faintest spark of hope lighting his features for the first time in months. Judge Whitman took his place at the bench, adjusting his glasses as he looked over the room. This court has received new evidence from Miss Emma Caldwell, he said, his voice cutting through the air. In light of what has been presented, the judgment previously issued is stayed pending a full investigation into possible perjury, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. The words landed like stones in a still pawn-shop rippled outward. The reporter scribbled faster. Cameras clicked with a ferocity that made the air feel electric. Vanessa's attorney rose sharply. Your Honor, this is an unprecedented interruption by an unqualified minor. The judge's gavel slammed down. That unqualified minor may have just exposed a serious miscarriage of justice. Sit down. Allison Parker shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her hands twisting in her lap. Natalie Reynolds kept her gaze fixed on the table, her jaw tight. But Diana Chen, the youngest and least seasoned of the 5, looked like she might be sick. Her eyes darted from Emma to the judge to Vanessa, as though realizing she was trapped in a room filling quickly with smoke. The judge's voice softened slightly as he turned to the plaintiffs. Ladies, before we proceed further, I am giving you one opportunity to reconsider your testimony in light of the evidence presented. The silence that followed was taut, every second stretched thin. And then, without warning, Diana stood. Her attorney tugged at her sleeve, whispering urgently, but she shook him off. Your Honor, she said, her voice trembling. I can't do this anymore. Vanessa's head snapped toward her. Diana, sit down. No, Diana said, louder now. She stepped out from behind the table, facing the judge. Mr. Caldwell never harassed me. He was always professional. Vanessa came to me 8 months ago with a proposal. She said companies like Horizon always settle these things quietly. Easy money. No one gets hurt. She turned to look at Robert, and her voice cracked. But people do get hurt. He got hurt. His daughter got hurt. The room erupted gasps, shouts. The rustle of journalists leaning forward for every word. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. Order. When the noise finally ebbed, James Wilson seized the moment. Miss Chen, can you tell the court who was involved in fabricating the evidence? Diana swallowed hard. Vanessa and a man named Derek Sullivan. He used to work for Horizon. He had access to everything. He said he could make it look like Mr. Caldwell had done things he hadn't. Robert's face darkened at the name. Emma, sitting beside him, tightened her grip on his hand under the table. The name was more than a clue. It was the missing piece she'd suspected all along. Before the judge could respond, the back doors of the courtroom banged open. A man in a crumpled suit strode in, his expression grim. Your Honor, my name is Michael Reynolds. I'm Natalie Reynolds' brother. I have information you need to hear right now. Natalie's face drained of color. Mikey, don't. But he kept moving, handing the bailiff a small USB drive. This contains recordings of Vanessa, Morgan, and Derek Sullivan discussing how they doctored evidence, recruited the others, and pressured my sister. And it includes them talking about enlisting Catherine Caldwell's help. Robert's head whipped toward Catherine in the gallery. Her hands were clasped in her lap, knuckles white, eyes glistening. She didn't deny it. The judge looked over the files briefly before speaking, his voice low but ringing with authority. I am issuing immediate arrest warrants for Vanessa Morgan and Derek Sullivan, and ordering a criminal investigation into all parties implicated in these recordings. Court is in recess. Until further notice, the bailiffs moved fast. Vanessa sprang to her feet, her voice rising in fury. This isn't over. Do you hear me? This isn't. Her words were cut short as her arms were pinned behind her back. Emma sat perfectly still, her expression unreadable. She'd done what she came to do, but she also knew something no one else in that room realized. Yet Derek Sullivan was dangerous, and if he was still out there, this battle was far from finished. The courthouse hallway was a storm of noise and flashing lights. Reporters swarmed like bees, their microphones thrust forward, shouting questions that blurred together. Mr. Caldwell, will you countersue? Is it true your ex-wife was involved? Emma, how did you find the evidence? Robert kept his arm protectively around Emma, guiding her through the chaos, his attorney cutting a path ahead of them. The bailiffs were already escorting Vanessa out a side door in handcuffs, her face twisted in fury. But in the flurry of movement, Emma's eyes found Catherine's. Her mother stood just beyond the crowd, leaning against the marble wall as though she'd been holding herself upright for hours. When Emma looked at her, Catherine straightened, her mouth opening as if to speak, but Robert gently pushed forward. Not now, he muttered under his breath. The drive back to Robert's townhouse was silent, the kind of silence that hummed with unspoken questions. When they stepped inside, Emma finally broke it. I need to talk to Mom. Robert hesitated. Today was a lot. Maybe I need to talk to her, she repeated, her voice firmer this time. She turned to James Wilson. Can you make sure no one disturbs us? Minutes later, Catherine arrived. She looked smaller somehow, without the crisp lines of her doctor's coat. Wearing a simple sweater and jeans, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. She stepped into the living room cautiously, like someone entering a battlefield where the enemy might be someone they love. Emma didn't waste time. Why? The single word cut sharper than any accusation. Catherine's breath caught, her gaze dropping to the rug. I told myself it was to protect you, she said quietly, but that wasn't the truth. I was angry. Your father and I, the divorce left scars I didn't want to admit to. When Natalie came to me, she told me stories, convincing stories that made me believe I'd been right about him all along. I wanted to believe them. Emma's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You wanted to believe Dad was the kind of man they said he was? I didn't want to see it, Catherine said, tears slipping free now. Because if I looked closer, I'd have to admit I was part of something ugly. By the time I knew it had gone too far, I felt trapped. Vanessa made it clear if I spoke up, they'd paint me as complicit. Emma's voice shook. But it wasn't. From fear, you let them destroy him. You let them try to destroy me. Catherine stepped closer, but Emma moved back a half step, the space between them now more than physical. I can't undo what I did, Catherine said, her voice breaking, but I will testify. I'll give the DA every detail, every conversation. I won't hide anymore. Before Emma could answer, the front door banged open. James rushed in, his phone in hand, his expression grim. Derek Sullivan's been spotted at airport security in Oakland. He tried to board a flight under a fake name, but he got away before they could detain him. He's gone dark. Robert's jaw tightened. He won't go quietly. He has too much to lose. James nodded, and there's more. He glanced at Emma. We just got word from a Horizon security analyst. They found signs someone's been inside your home system in the last 24 hours. Whoever it is, they weren't looking for money. They were looking for whatever Emma found today. Emma's stomach dropped. The purple backpack was still sitting by the couch. She moved to grab it. Unzipping it quickly, everything was still there, at least at first glance, but as she checked each file drive, her fingers froze. One of the USB sticks was missing, the one with the security footage of Vanessa in Robert's office. Catherine's voice was a whisper. Emma, what does that mean? Emma's mind was already racing. It means Derek knows exactly what I have. And he's not finished. Robert met his daughter's gaze, and for the first time since the trial began, there was no trace of the defeated man from the verdict. That we finished this, he said, on our terms. Night settled over the city like a curtain of black velvet, broken only by the gleam of streetlights and the cold blue glow from the screens in Robert's study. The townhouse was locked up tight, doors bolted, security system armed, motion sensors on every floor. Still, the tension in the air was sharp enough to taste. Emma sat cross-legged on the rug, her laptop balanced on her knees, lines of code flickering across the screen. She was tracing the last digital footprint Derek had left before disappearing in. IP address bouncing through so many proxies it felt like chasing a ghost. Robert hovered nearby, pacing in slow, restless arcs, phone in hand as he coordinated with James Wilson and a private security team. Catherine, uncharacteristically quiet, sat in the corner, her gaze never leaving Emma. The missing USB haunted them all. It was the most direct piece of physical evidence, placing Vanessa inside Robert's office. Something even a skilled defense couldn't explain away. Without it, the case wasn't dead, but it was weaker. Then, without warning, Emma's laptop pinged. A small black window popped up over her code. A message written in a blocky white font. You're smart, Emma. Too smart. Come get what's yours. Below it, a live video feed flickered to life. It showed a dimly lit storage facility, rows of metal doors stretching into the distance. On the floor in the frame, lit by a swinging bare bulb, sat the missing USB drive, its metallic casing glinting under the light. Robert leaned over her shoulder. Where is that? Emma's fingers flew over the keys. I'm trying to trace it. Hold on. She froze. He's bouncing the signal through Horizon's old internal servers. He's taunting us. And she swallowed. He knows I'm here. The feed's coming from less than 5 miles away. James's voice crackled through Robert's speakerphone. You cannot go there. This is bait. And Derek Sullivan is dangerous. Let the police handle it. But even as he spoke, Emma shook her head. If the cops go in, he'll destroy it before they even get close. He wants me to come. He's daring me. Robert crouched in front of her, gripping her shoulders. Emma, listen to me. This isn't your fight to finish. You've already done more than anyone could have asked. Yes, it is my fight, she said, her voice trembling but unyielding, because he's not just trying to ruin you anymore. He's coming after me, and if I don't go, he wins. The room went still. Catherine's breath hitched, her knuckles white where they gripped the armrest of her chair. Robert, she whispered, if she goes, she doesn't go alone. Within an hour, Robert's SUV rolled through the industrial district, its headlights slicing through the fog. James had arranged for the security contractors to follow in another car, but their orders were clear: hang back unless things went wrong. Robert drove in silence, his jaw clenched, Emma beside him with her backpack ready, every file and device she still had packed inside. Catherine sat in the back seat, a silent shadow, her eyes scanning every street corner. The storage facility loomed ahead, a squat concrete building ringed with chain-link fencing topped with barbed wire. A single security light buzzed over the entrance. The gate was open. Inside, The place smelled of oil and dust, the narrow corridors echoing each of their footsteps. They followed the numbered doors until they reached Unit 47, the one from the video. The door was half open, light spilling onto the concrete floor. Robert gestured for Emma to stay back, but she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her ears. The USB sat exactly where she'd seen it on the feed, and then a voice came from the shadows. "You really are your father's daughter." Derek Sullivan stepped into the light, his suit rumpled, his hair disheveled, but his eyes sharp and hungry. In his left hand, he held a small device. Emma recognized it instantly as a data wiper. One click and the USB's contents would vanish forever. "You made this very entertaining," Derek said, his voice low, almost conversational. "But you don't understand what you've stumbled into. That drive. It's not just about your father's office. It's the last piece of something much bigger, something your father tried to bury, Project Oracle," Emma said before she could stop herself. Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. "So you do know. Smart girl. Smarter than him, maybe. But here's the problem, smart gets you hurt." Robert stepped in front of his daughter, his voice sharp. "This ends now. Derek, you give me that drive, you walk away, and maybe the DA cuts you a deal." Derek's laugh was cold. "You think this is about deals? No, Robert. This is about making sure the world knows who you really are. You killed Oracle, but pieces of it still exist enough to change everything. And now your little prodigy has wandered right into the middle of it." His thumb hovered over the wiper's button. "So, Emma, what's it worth to you?" The hum of the buzzing light in the storage unit was the only sound for a moment, a faint insect drone above the pounding of Emma's heart. Derek stood there, a silhouette against the swinging bulb, the USB drive on the floor between them, and the small black data wiper in his hand, its single red button gleaming like a warning. Robert angled himself in front of Emma, every muscle in his body coiled tight. Catherine stood just behind, her eyes locked on Derek, not with fear, but with something closer to fury. Emma's gaze flicked between the device in Derek's hand and the cold satisfaction in his eyes. He wasn't bluffing. One press, and the proof tying Vanessa to Robert's office would be gone. "You've been running scared for weeks," Robert said, his voice low but steady. "This is your last card. Don't think for a second that I won't take you down without it." Derek smirked. "You've always been good at pretending you're the noble one, Robert. But Project Oracle was yours before it was mine. You pulled the plug because you didn't have the stomach to face what we could do with it. That was your mistake. I kept going, and now I'm the only one holding the truth." Emma's voice cut in, sharp enough to make Derek's eyes snap. To her, "No, you're not. I already backed up the drive for the briefest second." Derek's smirk faltered. "Lying won't save you." "I'm not lying," she said, taking a careful step forward. "You think you're the only one who knows how to play this game. I've been ahead of you since the moment you stole that footage. I copied every byte onto a secure server you can't touch, so go ahead, wipe it. All it will do is prove you came here to destroy evidence." Robert shot her a quick, warning glance, but Emma's gaze didn't waver. She knew Derek had one weakness, his ego. If she could make him believe she was untouchable, maybe he'd slip. Derek's jaw worked, his thumb hesitating over the button. "If that's true, then why are you here?" "Because you have something else," Emma replied. "Something you didn't send to Vanessa or the others. Something about Oracle you're desperate to keep hidden, and I want it." The air seemed to tighten. Derek's eyes flickered just once, but it was enough. Robert took the opportunity. "Derek, you're boxed in. You've got security outside. The DA building a case, and now a digital trail that leads straight here. You hand over the drive and whatever else you've got, and maybe they'll talk reduced sentence. Keep playing tough guy, and you're finished." Derek laughed, but it was thinner now. "You think the DA scares me? Oracle isn't some petty scandal, it's power. The kind of power governments pay for. The kind that turns you into a ghost while the world dances to your strings." And Robert, he tilted his head toward Emma. "You raised a girl who could actually use it." Emma's stomach turned, but she kept her voice calm. "If you're so sure I could use it, then you're smart enough to know I can also destroy it." That landed. Derek's thumb pulled back from the button, just slightly. Catherine shifted her weight forward, her voice cold as steel. "You talk about power, but all I see is a man hiding in a rented storage unit because an 11-year-old outsmarted him." That was the crack. Derek's expression darkened, and in that instant, the corridor outside erupted in the pounding of boots, The door to the unit slammed open, flooding the space with a sharp beam of tactical flashlights, hands where we can see them. A voice barked. Derek spun, caught between fight and flight, and for a moment Emma thought he'd run. But the sight of 4 armed officers filling the doorway drained the last of his bravado. The data wiper clattered to the concrete as 2 of them closed in, cuffing his wrists. As they pulled him past Robert, Derek twisted his head just enough to murmur, "This isn't over. Oracle's bigger than you think, and it's not dead." They dragged him away before Robert could respond. Silence settled over the unit again, broken only by the echo of footsteps retreating down the corridor. Emma stepped forward and picked up the USB from the floor, holding it tightly in her hand. Her fingers trembled not from fear, but from the rush of having stared down the man who nearly destroyed her family. Outside, the cool night air hit them like a cleansing wave. Robert rested a hand on her shoulder. "You were reckless," he said, his voice thick with a mix of anger and awe, "and brave. God, Emma, you saved everything." Catherine stepped closer, her voice quieter. "You also scared me half to death, but I've never been prouder." Emma slipped the USB into her backpack and zipped it shut. "Derek's right about one thing," she said. "Oracle isn't dead. If he could keep it alive this long, someone else could too. We need to make sure it never sees daylight again." Robert met her gaze, the faintest smile touching his lips. "Then we'll do it together." Weeks later, in a packed conference hall, Robert announced the launch of the Emma Caldwell Foundation for Ethical Technology, dedicated to ensuring no innovation would ever be used to strip away privacy and manipulate lives in secret. The applause was thunderous. Emma stood beside him on stage, scanning the faces in the crowd, and in the very back, she thought she saw someone watching her, half in shadow. When she blinked, the space was empty. She knew better than to think. It was over. Oracle had been buried, but somewhere, someone might still be digging, and when they did, she'd be ready.